Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Daf 5, Masechta Rosh Hashanah. Friends, Daf 5, we're really going to explore, we're going to explore some more the mitzvahs lo saseh of Baal Ta'acher, of when you make a neder, when you say you're going to bring something to the Beis Hamikdash, or it could be other things like even like tzedakah or something we saw. So, you gotta make sure that you bring it to the Beis Hamikdash within 3 of the regalim, although it's a big machlokas between lots of different opinions of it. Maybe it can even be 1 of the shalosh regalim, but you have to make sure that you don't dilly-dally on bringing this neder that you said that you're going to do. So, we're going to jump in and explore that a little bit differently. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is that as part of the things that we said are included in this lav of Baal Ta'acher, we also said the Korban Pesach is included in Baal Ta'acher. So, for the Gemara, Ufesach Mikarev Birgalmu. So, we're on Daf Hey, on Daf 5 of Masechta Rosh Hashanah, and we actually kind of got, the Hey and Aleph is pretty small, and we're already, I think, more than halfway through the Amud. So, right, so we're about 6 or 7 lines from the bottom of the page. It says, the last word on line was Pesach. Pesach by Mikarev Birgalmu. So, right, can you really offer the Korban Pesach on these regalim Pesach zimna kviyele? Yaakove, vilo akave idchele. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. For example, I don't know, if you say you're going to bring a Korban Shlomim to the Beis Hamikdash, okay, so bring a Korban Shlomim to the Beis Hamikdash. You have 3 regalim, depending on where you hold on the machlokas, but let's just say you have 3 regalim to bring it. Okay, if you miss 3 regalim and you didn't bring your Korban Shlomim that you said you were going to bring, you're violating the law of Baal Ta'acher. And Pesach doesn't really fall into that category because Korban Pesach is, you bring a Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach. If you offer it, you offer it. You don't offer it, you missed it. What do you want me to tell you? Right? There's not like, it doesn't fall under the category of Baal Ta'acher that you have 3 regalim to bring it like the other things there do. Omer Rav Chizda Pesach Kedina Azba. So Rav Chizda says, look, Pesach wasn't really listed there for any particular reason. Meaning, it mentioned Bechor, Meiser, Pesach, those things are often listed together. So listed Pesach, but the fact of the matter is, says Rav Chizda, there isn't really a nafkamina for Pesach in the law of Baal Ta'acher. Rav Sheshes Omer, whereas Rav Sheshes disagrees and he says, my Pesach, Shalmei Pesach. What's a Korban Pesach? A Shalmei Pesach, right? For example, right, we said that Mosar Pesach Karev Shlomim. We learned that halacha in Masechta Psachim, that if you have a leftover Korban Pesach, for example, if it got lost, so you weren't able to offer it because it got lost and then it got found, and now it's after, you already offered a different one. So you offer it as a Korban Pesach. You offer it as a Korban Shlomim. So what we're saying is that if you have Mosar Pesach, if you have this Korban Pesach that ended up becoming a Korban Shlomim, so make sure that you offer it within 3 regalim, or wherever you hold on that machlokas. But if that's the case, well then that's just the Korban Shlomim, and we had already listed with all the other things that are included in the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher, we listed a Korban Shlomim. So, this Shalmei Pesach, this Korban Pesach that you didn't bring on time, so it becomes a Shlomim. So, it's just a regular Shlomim, and we already know that Baal Ta'acher applies to regular Shlomim. So, Tana Shlomim Maboin Machmas Pesach, Tana Shlomim Maboin Machmas Atzman. So, and for the Gemara, that, we had to be taught about this. We had to teach regular plain old Shlomim, and we had to bring Mosar, we had to also mention that Mosar Pesach, that these leftover Korban Pesachs, which are offered as Shlomim, also are included in the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher. So again, Tana Shlomim Aboin Machmas Pesach, we had to teach the Korban Shlomim that was originally a Korban Pesach, Tana Shlomim Aboin Machmas Atzman, and we also had to teach just plain old Korban Shlomims, because Hakadai Techamino, I may have thought to say, Hol Machmas Pesach Koasu, Ki Pesach Domu. Well, I may have thought to say that, since this Korban Shlomim was initially a Korban Pesach, right? It was initially a Pesach that wasn't offered. So it became a shlamim. So I might think that, well, since it started out as a Pesach, I should treat it out as a Korban Pesach, that you only have one of the regalim to offer it. So, Kamash Milan, we say, what we're teaching is that no, even this animal that was initially a Korban Pesach and is now a shlamim, we treat just like any regular shlamim, in that you have 3 regalim to offer it before you are violating Baal Ta'acher, assuming that your opinion is that you actually have 3 regalim. The Tanu Rabbanon, as the rabbis taught. Okay, so now, so how do we know that all of these things that we said apply to Baal Ta'acher? How do we know that these things, right, from where do we know that these things apply to Baal Ta'acher? So here we go. The Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Ki Sidor Neder. So what's this pasuk? This pasuk is, let's read the pasuk first, I think it would be helpful. Ki Sidor Neder LaHashem Elokecha, when you make a vow to the Eibishter, Lo Sa'acher L'Shalmo, don't take too long to execute it. Ki Darush Yitushenu Hashem Elokecha Me'imoch, that the Eibishter is going to inquire about it from you, and there will be in you a sin, and memele, you don't want to sin, so bring your vows on time, execute your vows on time. So now, the Gemara, the Braise, analyzes each part of that pasuk. Kisidor neder. So the pasuk says that when you make a neder, so all I know is if you make a neder, how do I know that this also applies to a nedava by Baal Ta'acher? And what did we say? Did we see in the Gemara already? Definitely in tomorrow's daf we're going to see. But maybe Rashi pointed out the difference between a neder and a nedava. A neder is when you say, I'm going to bring, for example, shlamim. Okay, I'm going to bring a korban shlamim. So you have to bring a korban shlamim. So even if you set aside one animal and it died, so set aside a different animal. Kilu, you said you're going to bring a shlam, so bring a shlam. Whereas a nedaveh is when you go up to a certain animal and you say you are going to be a korban shlamim. Well, in that case, he designated a specific animal. If that animal then dies, well, the animal died. Well, you don't have to bring a replacement. You said you're specifically going to bring this animal. This animal died. Okay, so obviously you're not going to offer it, and that's that. So a neder is when you say, I'm going to bring a korban. So you have to bring a korban. And even if you set aside one of them and it dies, so bring a different one. Nedava is a specific animal. And if that animal dies, well then, okay, the animal died. You don't have to bring a replacement. So, Kisidor neder, Eini ele neder, nedav minayin. So this pasuk seems to only mention neder. How do I know that this applies to nedav as well? Ne'emar kan neder v'ne'emar l'halon im neder o nedave. Well, it says over here, kisidor neder, when you make a neder, and we have another pasuk that says im neder o nedava, whether it's a neder or a nedava. Malahalon nedava af imo af kan nedava imo. Just like in that other pasuk, when it says neder, it also includes nedava. So here oichet, here also, when it says do not take too long to pay back your vow, to execute on your vow, so it's not just a neder, but it's oichet, a nedava. Okay. L'Hashem Elokecha, when the pasuk says to the Eibishter, Elu Adamin, this is when a fellow says that I'm going to give my value to the Beis Hamikdash, kilu, the value as I would be sold as a slave. Ha'arochin Erech, which is a fixed price based on your gender and your age. Ve'acharomin ve'akadeshis, and if a fellow donates something to the Beis Hamikdash, so how do I know that all of these, right, so that's also included in Baal Ta'acher, Lo Sa'acher the Shalmo, so then when the pasuk says, do not take too long to pay it, Hu v'lo chilufav, so the Shalmo, it, don't pay it, right, Baal Ta'acher applies to it, but Baal Ta'acher does not apply to a Tmura, right, so if you have a Tmura of an animal, so then Baal Ta'acher doesn't apply, and we're going to get into details of what this means. But if you remember from Psachim, so we talked a little bit over there about Temuras. Temura is basically if you set aside one animal to be a korban, and then you swap it out for a different animal, whether it's because the initial one that you maybe the first one got lost, and then you set aside a different one, and then you kind of found the first one, or maybe you've decided that, you want a different animal that's better than this one, so you say, you know what, I'm going to bring that one instead, which you're not allowed to do. So in those cases, right, that's what a tamura is. A tamura is when you swap out an animal that was supposed to be for a korban, it ends up getting switched for another animal. So that animal ends up becoming a tamura. So we're going to learn a little bit. We're going to go into detail about what exactly this means in a little bit. Kidarush Yijushenu, right? So we're saying that it's tamura does not apply to the Isser of Baal Ta'acher. Okay? Kidarush Yijushenu, where the passage says that the Eibishter is going to inquire about it. Eilu chatos v'asham solus u'shlamim. So this is where we learn about chatos, asham, and ola, and shlamim. These all apply to Baal Ta'acher. Hashem Elokecha elu tzedakis u'maisvis uvchor. So when it says to Hashem your God, that's talking about if you pledge to give tzedakah. Also, don't take too long with your maisris and with a bechor, right? If you have a firstborn animal, so you have to offer it as a korban in the Beis Hamikdash. So do that in your first year. Don't be late. Me'imach from you zeleket shechicha ufeya. That applies to leket, shechicha, and peya, which is, so leket is when you're harvesting your field. If certain grains fall on the ground, then you leave it. Shechicha is if you forget about certain like stalks, so you leave that for the aniyim, for the poor people. And peya is that you leave a corner of your field also for poor people to collect. So these things. So the question is, how exactly does that apply to Baal Ta'acher? So one suggestion is that, well, if you collect them for yourself and then realize, so you have to give them back. So don't take too long to do that. So you will have a sin, but there's nothing wrong with the animal itself. So if you take too long to bring this korban, so while it's not good for you, it reflects poorly upon you and it'll be a sin, but the animal is still okay. You could still offer it as a korban. There's nothing wrong with the animal. Alright, that was fun. So we basically learned, how do we know that all of these things apply to the lav, the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher, of don't take too long? So from this pasuk, we can learn out all of these things. Take every few words, throw a bunch of things into those words, and there is your source. Omer Mar, we just said, Lo ta'acher l'shalmo hu v'lo chilufav. Oh, givaldik. So we just said a few minutes ago, and we said we were going to unpack it, which is we said, Lo ta'acher l'shalmo, don't take too long to execute it. Right, execute on this particular vow. So we said it and not its tamura, it and not its switch. So it's swapping, it's swapper, right? It and not its tamura. So chilufei mai. What kind of tamura are we talking about? Let's go back to chilufei ola v'shlamim. Well, if we're talking about a chilufei ola or a shlamim. So, for example, if you set aside a korban ola, right, that you're going to bring a korban ola, or that you're going to bring a korban shlamim, and then it gets lost. So you set a different one aside, okay, and then you offer that second one, and then you find the original. So if we're saying that, well, Baal Ta'acher does not apply to the original one now, right? So you set aside an animal, it got lost, you set aside a different one, you offer the second one, and then you found the original. So we're saying that Baal Ta'acher, so that one you would offer as a shlamim. Wait, sorry, let me say that again, 1 second. You had set aside a korban to be an ola or a shlamim. Fine. It got lost. Okay, givaldik. And then you found so it got lost. So then you set aside a different korban, a different animal to be the ola or the shlamim. And then you found the original one and offered the original one. What do you do now with this other animal that you set aside to be its replacement? So we're saying that, so this animal you have to offer as well, right? You just offer it as I think as an ola or a shlamim. So, meaning if you had set aside the korban to be a shlamim, and then it got lost, so you set aside a different one to be a shlamim in its place. Then you found the original one and offered the original one. Well, this tamura, this one that you put in its place, is also going to be offered as a shlamim, right? And also the same thing with an ola. I think the tamura, I imagine would also be offered as an ola, though possibly as a shlamim, but I'm assuming it's offered as an ola. But the point is that in both of those cases, by the ola and the shlamim, well, this Tamura is going to be offered as well. And if that's the case, then there's no reason why Baal Ta'achir should not apply, i.e. Baal Ta'achir should apply to the Tamura as well. In which case, how could it be that the Pasuk is saying that Baal Ta'achir would not apply to the Tamura of an Ola Ushlamim? Because surely Baal Ta'achir should apply to the Tamura, since it would be offered as well. Okay. And if we're saying that the same thing happened with a korban chatas, right? So you had set aside a animal to be a korban chatas, it got lost. So then you set aside a different animal in its place to be a korban chatas, and then you find the original one and offer it. So then the replacement one, well, the halacha is that you just have to let it die, right? The halacha is that a chatas sheniskapu ba'aleh, that if you have a korban chatas that the owners already got atonement from a different animal, so then you just have to let it die, essentially. So in this case, if we have a Tamura of a korban chatas, well then obviously there isn't, the halacha of Baal Ta'achir doesn't apply, because you just need to essentially just you just starve it to death, essentially. So Baal Ta'achir won't really apply because it'll be dead. Okay, fine. So, if we're talking about the Tamura of a korban chatas, lemisa azal, well then you just gotta let it die. Elamai chiluf of chilufei toda. Oh, so what are we talking? We're talking about the Tamura of a korban toda. Okay, you set aside a korban toda, right? There's something good happened to you, so you're gonna bring a korban toda. So, and then let's go weiter. Titani Titani Reb the Reb Chia taught toda shenes ayva b'tamurasa. So if you have a korban toda, you set aside an animal to be a korban toda, then it got lost. So then you set aside a different animal to be a korban toda in its place. So now the halacha is that this other animal that you set aside in its place, this tamura, so you can offer it, but you won't bring the 40 loaves that you normally bring with a korban toda. So a korban toda is accompanied with 40 breads. 30 of them are unleavened, 10 of them are leavened. So if the first one got lost and then you set aside a different one in its place, well, the second one you would offer but without all the breads. And then what happened? So it says, shenis arva b'tmurasa, but then you found the original one and now they got mixed together and you don't know which one's which. V'meisa achas mein, and now one of them died and you only have one left, and you don't know if the one that's left is the original one, which would you would bring 40 loaves with, or is it the tamura, which you would offer but without the 40 loaves. So ein la takana, so we say in that case there's really nothing that you can do. Heichi li'avid, because what can you do? Likarva v'likarv lechem bahada, well, if you offer this animal and you offer with it 40 loaves, dilma tmurahi, maybe this is the substitute. And the substitute, you're not allowed to you don't bring the 40 loaves with. Likaiva below lechem, and if we offer this animal without any of the breads, well, dilma todahi, maybe this is the original animal, period. Maybe it's the original one, and it needs the 40 breads, so there's nothing that you can do with it. And because there's nothing that you can do with it, so you can't offer it. And what we're saying is that you're not going to be violating the lav of Baal Ta'achir in this case. Perfecting Gemara, if you're not allowed to offer this korban, this tamura in this case, right? Because we're not sure if it's the original one or the substitute. So since you're not allowed to offer it anyways, so then certainly it would be excluded from Baal Ta'achir. I don't need a pasuk to tell me that you're not going to be violating Baal Ta'achir in this case. Of course you're not going to be violating Baal Ta'achir. It's you don't offer it. So if you're not supposed to offer it, then you're not going to be violating Baal Ta'achir. I don't need a pasuk to teach me that. So we're kind of still trying to figure out what would be the situation where the pasuk would need to teach me that Tamura is not shaykh to Baal Ta'achir. If it's talking about a Tamura of a Shlamim or an Ola, well then Baal Ta'achir should apply, because it's just you would offer it as a regular korban. And if it's talking about Tamura of a Chatas, well that's just you have to let it die, and it's not going to apply to to Baal Ta'acher. And if we try to suggest talking about a Korban Toda, but a Korban Toda you don't offer, right? If it gets mixed up and you don't know which one is which. So certainly we don't need to learn that is excluded from Baal Ta'acher. So what is the situation of Tamura that is excluded from Baal Ta'acher? So Omer Rav Sheshes says, Rav Sheshes La'odam L'mutei Chilufe Ola V'Shlamim. So really it is to exclude Ola, the Tamura of an Ola and a Shlamim from Baal Ta'acher. Okay, but didn't we just say that the Tamura of Ola and Shlamim you just offer as a regular Korban, so it should be included in Baal Ta'acher? V'achab Ma'askinon Kigon She'avu Olav Shnei Regalim V'humam. Well, it's talking about a situation where two of the festivals pass, right? So let's say like the Tanakama, that if you have a neder, if you say you're going to bring a Korban, so you have up to 3 festivals until you violate Baal Ta'acher. So let's say you said you're going to bring a Korban, and then Pesach passes, and Shavuos passes, you still haven't offered it, and then what happens? Vihumam. And then the animal gets a mum. So you said you're going to bring a Korban, you didn't bring it for the first 2 regalim, and then it gets a mum. V'chililo al acher. So because this Korban that you set aside got a mum, so you transferred its kedusha to a different Korban, and now you're going to offer this other Korban. So the question is, now what happens with this Korban? V'avar olav regel echad, and now comes Sukkos with this new Korban, right? So Pesach passed, you didn't offer it. Shavuos passed, you didn't offer it. Then it got a mum, so you transferred its value, its kedusha to another animal. And then comes Sukkos, and you still didn't offer now this new animal. So I might think, Sakadate Chamina, I might think, so I might think, well, since this new animal is really sort of the original animal in a new 4 kilo, it's really just the original animal whose holiness was transferred onto it. So maybe since the original one already had 2 strikes against it, when you neglected to offer it then on Sukkos, it counts as 3 strikes and you violate Baal Ta'acher. Kamash Malon, then no, you would not yet violate Baal Ta'acher in that case. Uli Reb Meir, de Omar, Kivin Shavar Olav, Regel Echad over Baal Ta'acher, Michael Meimar. Well, what about according to Reb Meir, who says that you really only have one shot, right? That you have to offer. If you say you're going to bring a Korban, you have to bring it before the first regel. Once the first regel passes, so then you're already in violation of Baal Ta'acher. So if that's the case, what would be the situation of Tamura that we have to learn about, that it's exempt from Baal Ta'acher? So, well, this is going to be talking about a situation where the original animal got a mum during the festival. So let's say, right? So let's say you had said before Pesach that you're going to offer a Korban. So according to Reb Meir, if Pesach passes and you don't offer the Korban, you're violating Baal Ta'acher. So let's say you had set aside an animal, and halfway through the festival, halfway through Pesach, it gets a mum. So you transfer its kedusha onto another animal, and then you don't offer it by the end of Pesach. So v'chil of olav aregel sakadai techamina. I may have thought to say mikoach kama ka'asi. Well, since this new animal is really just the kedusha of the original animal transferred onto it, so commando over ole kule regel domi. So I might have the havamina to say that we treat it like the original animal, in that, if the original animal would have passed the entire regel, the entire Pesach in this case, and you didn't offer it, then you would be violating Baal Ta'acher. So maybe in this case as well, this new animal that has the kedusha of the original one, if you don't offer by the end of Pesach, you would also be violating Baal Ta'acher. Kamash Malon, so it comes to teach that we don't treat it as though the entire festival passed. You would not be violating Baal Ta'acher, since it only got its holiness halfway through the festival. Okay, that sounds like fun. Okay, so that is the situation of Tamura that we had to say is excluded from Baal Ta'acher. Right? We had the solution of Sheshes, that it can be talking about if it got a mum after 2 festivals, and then you transfer this kedusha onto another animal. So after the third festival, this new animal will not be in violation of Baal Ta'achar. And also, we could say that it's talking about, according to Meir, Rava says that we're talking about where the animal got a mum in the middle of the festival, and you transfer this kedusha onto another animal. If you didn't offer it by the end of the festival, you will not be in violation of Baal Ta'achar. The pasuk says, and if you violate this Baal Ta'achar, it will be a sin for you, but your animal is still perfectly fine. 1 second. Is this where we learn out that your animal is perfectly fine? Mida acherim nafka. I thought that we learned it out from the opinion of the acherim. The Tanya is we learn in a braysa acherim. Avim say acherim. Yachuye bechor she'avar shnaso kipsule amukdashim v'yipasel. Is it possible that if you have a bechor that you did not offer within the first year, then we should treat it like pasel kodshim, and it should be pasel, right? Meaning a bechor, firstborn animal, so you offer it ideally within its first year. You offer it as a korban. Now, if you did not offer it as a korban, so then what happens? So if you didn't offer it within its first year, then what happens? So acherim say, well, is it possible that bechor she'avar shnaso, that if a bechor lives past its first year, you haven't offered as a korban, that it should be kipsule amukdashim v'yipasel? Should we say that it's pasel and you cannot offer it? Well, the pasuk says that you will eat before the Eibishter. Meiser degancha tiroshcha v'tzarecha, the maaser of your grains and your wine and your oils of choros bekarcha v'tzonecha, and the firstborns of your cattle and your flock. Makish bechor the meiser. We compare bechor to meiser. Ma meiser enu nifshal mishana lechaverta. Just like meiser doesn't become passul from one year to the next, right? Because we say that if you don't bring it, if you don't bring the meiser sheni to Yerushalayim the first year and the second year, so you can bring it in the third year. So af bechor enu nifshal mishana lechaverta. Also, a bechor, if you don't offer it within the first year, it does not become passul. So we see from there already that if you take too long to offer a bechor, so you will, so even though it might not be good for you, but the bechor could still be offered. So here also, if you take too long to offer your, neder or whatever it is that you have to offer, while it might be a lav for you, a violation for you, but the animal is completely fine. And for the Gemara, it's true. No, we needed to learn about, we needed our pasuk to teach us that the korban will be perfectly, that the korban will be perfectly fine, because I may have thought to say, I may have thought to say, well, the pasuk needs to teach us that a bechor I can offer even if it's after the first year, after the time that you're supposed to offer it, because a bechor is not coming as an appeasement. But animals that you're bringing as an appeasement, right? Let's say you say, I'm going to bring a korban shlam for God. So that's to appease God. Well, how much of an appeasement is it going to be if you're not following the rules, if you're not bringing it on time? So I might have the argument to say, well, even though a bechor, which is just a regular korban, not necessarily as an appeasement per se, but it's a regular korban that you offer. So if you miss the time window, so okay, you could still offer it. But a korban that's coming as an appeasement, well, how much of an appeasement is it if you're offering it too late? There were rules, you didn't follow the rules. Maybe the Eibishter doesn't want it anymore. So therefore, kamash malon. So that is why our pasuk has to teach that that for you it's going to be a problem, but the korban is still going to be a good korban. Ve'akati mid ben azay nafka. But still, we know that any korban that you violate Baal Ta'achar, it's only your problem, but the korban can still be offered. We know that from Ben Azai. The Tanya is, we're learning a verse. Ben Azai, Omer says Ben Azai also that it says by pigul. What does it say? It says pigul where are we? Bayom hashlishi lo yirotze hamakiv also lo yechoshev lo. That if somebody offers it doesn't work. Matam lomar. How come it has to say also it? Lefisha nemar, because the pasuk says lo sa'acher l'shalmo. Well, because the pasuk says do not take too long to pay back, to execute on your neder. So Shomea Ani Af Me'acher Nidro B'Val Yerotze. So I might think that will just like pigul, right? That if you plan to eat it outside of its proper time, so then it doesn't work. It's not an appeasement. So I might think, well, it also says in the pasuk that lo ta'acher the shamu, right? The pasuk by bal ta'acher, don't take too long. That if you say you're going to bring a korban, bring it. Don't take too long. So I might think Shomea Ani. I might think af ma'acher nidro b'Val Yerotze, that just like pigul doesn't, right? It doesn't appease. So also I might think that that if you violate bal ta'acher, if you take too long to execute on your korban, so I might think that also doesn't appease, and you should no longer offer it. Talmud Omer oso. Therefore, it says by pigul oso, it oso below yiratze. That specifically by pigul, right? Pigul is when you have intention to eat, let's say eat a korban outside of its allotted time. Let's say, for example, korban shlamim, you can eat it for 2 days. So let's say you plan to eat it on a third day. So we're saying that does not work. You can't, right? It's not going to be an appeasement. So I might think that also by bal ta'acher, that when it says don't take too long to offer your korbanos, so if I do wait too long, I might think also over there that then I should not offer it. So therefore it says oso. In the context of pigul, it says it. Oso below yiratze, that specifically pigul will not be an appeasement. Vein ma'acher nidro below yiratze. But somebody who takes too long to offer his korban, you could still offer it. It's no problem over there. So we already see from Ben Azai that if you take too long to bring your korban, so while it's not good for you, right? That it's going to be a sin for you, but the animal is still perfectly fine. You can offer it. So then, why do I need the? So if I'm learning that from pigul, that it says oso by pigul, that pigul won't be an appeasement, but if you take too long on your animal, it's fine. So again, why do I need our pasuk to teach me v'ya b'chachet v'lo b'korban chachet? So ela b'chachet v'lo b'ishta chachet. No. So rather, what the limud is not. It is not v'ya b'chachet v'lo b'korban chachet. Rather, it's v'ya b'chachet. It will be a sin for you v'lo b'ishta chachet, but keep your wife out of it. It's not going to be any problems for your wife. What does your wife have to do with anything? Well, I may have thought to say, that since Rabbi Yochanan, some say Rabbi Elazar says, that a fellow, his wife will die if he steals money and then they try to ask him about it and he doesn't have it. So then his wife dies. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, if you don't have with what to pay back, why should you have to lose your wife? Alright. So I might think also that, well, if a fellow says that he's going to bring a korban and he doesn't, so maybe his wife should pay for it, should die. So Kamash Malon, therefore we have to teach, no, it's your problem, buddy. It's not your wife's problem. Alright, very nice. So friends, what do we talk about today? Well, so we really talked about this halacha of bal ta'acher, right? First we talked about in the context of korban pesach, because we had mentioned that bal ta'acher applies to korban pesach. So he said, what does korban pesach have to do with anything? You offer the korban pesach on pesach. If you missed it, you missed it. You don't make it up on any other festivals. So Rav Chizda suggested, well, truth is we really mentioned Pesach for no particular reason, other than the fact that we mentioned Bechor and Meiser, and Pesach is often grouped together with that. Whereas Rav Shesha says that no, when it mentions Pesach, it's talking about a korban Pesach that you didn't offer on Pesach, so it becomes a shlomim. And we're saying that shlomim, Bal Ta'acher applies to that shlomim. And we said that, so I may have thought to say that since this shlomim is different from regular shlomims, because it was initially a Pesach, so maybe just like Pesach, you have one festival, you specifically offer it on one festival on Pesach. So I might think that this shlomim, you only have one festival, and after that, you're going to be chayiv, over in Bal Ta'acher. So Kamash Malon, that, even this Shalmei Pesach, you still have 3 regalim to offer it, or however you understand Bal Ta'acher would apply to that korban shlomim. Then we had this brisa which kind of taught us the source for all of these different things that Baal Ta'achar apply to. And one of them was Timura, that Baal Ta'achar applies to the korban. Don't take too long for the korban, but it's Timura. Baal Ta'achar does not apply to the Timura if you switch the korban. And we're trying to understand what's the situation where if you switch this korban, so then we have to learn that Baal Ta'achar does not apply. We're trying to figure out, it can't be shlamim or ola, because in those cases the Timur you just offer in Baal Ta'achar should apply. It can't be a chatas, because the chatas that the owners already got an atonement, so then you have to just let it die. So Baal Ta'achar doesn't apply. We suggested maybe we was talking about a korban toda that got lost, and you bought a different one, and then you set aside a different one, and then one of them died, but we said in that case also, you just don't offer it, so we don't need to learn that Baal Ta'achar doesn't apply. So Rav Shesha suggested that it's talking about, well, you set aside an animal, 2 festivals passed, and you hadn't yet offered it, and then it got a mum. So you transfer its kedusha onto another animal. So I might think that after the next regel, so then you're going to be violating Baal Ta'achar at that point with this animal, because since you missed the first 2 with the first animal, and then you just transferred the kedusha onto this animal, so maybe after the 3rd regel you'd be over on Baal Ta'achar. We're saying no, you would not be over on Baal Ta'achar yet. And that's what is being excluded when we say that the Timura is excluded from Baal Ta'achar. And Rava explains that according to Reb Meir, who says that you only have 1 regel until you violate Baal Ta'achar anyways. So what is the situation where we have to learn that it does not apply to the Timura? So we say, well, if you had set aside a korban and then halfway through the festival it gets a mum, so you transfer its value onto a new korban, so and then you didn't offer it by the end of the festival, I may have thought to say that you would be violating Baal Ta'achar since the festival passed, and this new animal is really just coming from the kedusha of the first one, and the festival passed and you didn't offer it. Kamash Milan, that Baal Ta'achar does not apply, since you only had set aside this animal in the middle of the festival. Then we analyze the next part of the pasuk, which says Vayot b'chochet, that it will be in you a chet, but your animal is perfectly fine. You could still offer it after, even when it's too late. You could still offer the animal. We said, why does the pasuk need to teach me this? Right? I already know this from Acherim in the context of a bechor, that a bechor that is more than 1 year, you could still offer it. So why? So we see Bechor you could still offer even after a year. So the Gemara says, yeah, but maybe Bechor is unique in that it's not for appeasing. But an animal that's all about appeasing, maybe in that case, if you're bringing it too late, you're going against the rules, so maybe I shouldn't offer it. So our pasuk teaches us that you actually still do offer it. But then we say, but we know this from Ben Azai, who says that specifically pigul does not, do not offer pigul, an animal once it's pigul, but an animal that's too late, you can offer. So we already know that an animal that's too late you can offer. So what are we learning from our brisa? What we're learning is that it will be, if you take too much time and you don't offer the animal on time, it will be a sin for you, but it doesn't reflect negatively on your wife, because you may have thought to say that, well, the pasuk in Mishlei says that if you steal something and you're unable to pay it back, so then your wife can die. So I might think to say over here also, if you don't offer your korban on time, maybe your wife will die. So the Gemara says, no, the pasuk is saying, it's your problem, not your wife's. Alright friends, that was Daf Hey of Masechta Rosh Hashanah. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.